When was that reality moment for you? Like, man, something's really going on.
Um, the reality moment was when I was in the room and the physician was, stating to me that I needed to make my bucket list.
One, two, three, four.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the next Conversations with Brent. You talking about fighter? You talking about resilience? You talking about a can do, never give up attitude? Well, that's what you about to find out today. She's kind of special to me. She's my niece. Hey, Taj.
Hey, how are you doing
I'm good
today?
in you.
Awesome.
So I named some words that would describe you. But before we tell them why, what's one word you would use to describe what you've been through?
A lot of people will look at it as you would say hardship, but I look at it as a part of my journey, my testimony, me being able to share what journey I've been on, allowing others to see that anything that you're going through, you can come through on the other side, and God has always been on my side. I've always had a great support system. Um, Resilience is a huge word that I use because I feel that with me being sick and the things that I've battled, resilience have definitely been something that is been a part of me. So resilience is huge.
Definitely. So let's get into what it is, how you found out, and let's just kind of lay that foundation so people can understand what we're talking about.
Okay, so I was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer. No one in my family has it. We've never heard of it before. I'd never heard of it before. It was when I was a senior in college. I was at the age of 23. I was actually working on a bone marrow transplant unit, and the way that I found out was, yeah, I was working full time. I was going to school full time, but I was extremely tired. I was extremely fatigued. I had really red skin. Like I would take
Okay.
showers and my skin would be like really red and itchy after I got out of the shower. Um, Also, um, a lot of things that were happening. I was driving home from work one day and I just fell asleep,
Wow.
and I ran into a construction site, and I'm like, I'm not drinking, I'm
Right.
not doing anything out of the ordinary. What is going on? So I actually went to an emergency room. A physician there had ran some labs, and they had stated, because I was there for like some stomach pain. So I was thinking maybe it was related to that. And they
Right.
ran some labs, and they said that they would be more concerned about my blood work. My hematocrit was elevated, and then my platelets, which is to clot your blood, was extremely high. So they were more concerned about
Mhm.
that than what was happening with my stomach. I didn't really think anything of it because, one, I wasn't, educated in that particular area. I'm thinking like maybe it's an infection, it'll go away.
Right.
Um, didn't go away. Continued to have these stomach pains. So I went to a GI doctor. The GI doctor then reevaluated my labs and stated that he felt that I should go see a hematologist. He
Wow.
had he had pulled my labs, and he did say that there was something going on with my stomach, but it wasn't any GI issues. He felt that my spleen was enlarged. So one of the symptoms of the disease that I was diagnosed with, which is called Polycythemia vera, is an
Wait a minute. Say that
enlarged
again, kind of slower.
Polycythemia vera.
Okay.
It's spelled Polycythemi. Vera, Vera. Listen,
Wow.
for me to prior to me experiencing this and never heard it a day in my life, even with me working on a bone marrow transplant unit at Children's Hospital, I've never heard of it.
Hmm.
So when I was, diagnosed with that, prior to me getting my diagnosis, as I was saying, I was at the GI doctor. He also stated that my hemocratic level, and also my platelets were consistently high past, I think I had had my labs drawn maybe about 4 times prior to
Wow.
seeing him, and he had also drawn them, and it was consistently going up. So that was one a red flag. So I hadn't spoke to anyone in my family to let them know what was going on. I'm like, okay, let me just try to figure it out before I think anything crazy. So I actually took my labs to the head hematologist at Children's, and she told me to leave work right away and to go see her husband, who
Wow.
was a hematologist at Tri Health Hospital. His name was Dr. Mehta. I went in. He did a bunch of labs, and he had shared what he thought that it could be, but he didn't really want to give me any answers at that point in time. So he said, we're going to draw all these labs, and then you're going to come in next week, and then we'll go over them. So, anticipation, really being concerned about what it could be, just because of what I've seen on the unit that I had worked on, with children, getting diagnosed with these rare diseases and these rare cancers or blood disorders. So, the day had came. I prayed in the parking lot prior to going in, and when I walked in, he had shared with me that he's never seen African American that has, well, woman that had gotten diagnosed, someone that was 23 years old that have gotten diagnosed with this, and that
Mm.
someone with this disease usually don't live to the age of 30.
Wow.
Um, Mind you, I'm going on 32, so I'm still here.
Yes.
But at the time, there wasn't a lot of information on it. I think they had found it, the actual disease, in the early 2000s, and it was considered a blood disorder and not necessarily a blood cancer. They had switched it in 2012 to a blood cancer because it's called a myeloproliferative neoplasm, meaning multiple cells, meaning multiple cancer cells that are expanding in your bloodstream.
Okay.
So what happens is, or what was happening, my blood levels were, my hematocrit and my platelets were extremely elevated, meaning I was clotting more so than I should. So I was
Mm.
creating, my blood was like syrup. So you know how syrup slowly comes out.
Right.
It was that thick. So anytime they would draw my labs, the valve would clot automatically, just
Wow.
because of how thick my blood was. And the issues that they were concerned about were blood clots. So, my senior year of college is when I had my first TIA, which is a form of a stroke, or what they call is a small stroke or a mini stroke. And I had to learn how to walk all over again. But how I found out that this was happening, I was actually at home cleaning my house, vacuuming, and I just collapsed. Um,
Mm.
and I was able to call the ambulance. And when they, came and brought me into the emergency room, they had said it was a TIA. But I still had some issues on my right side where I couldn't feel anything. My right leg was numb. I couldn't feel anything. When I got up to try to walk, I wasn't able to walk. So I had to go through rehab. I believe I was in rehab for about 6 weeks that first time around. Um, at that time, and I really didn't have much support because my family looked at me as being, really strong. I've never really complained. If I ever went through any of these things, it was more so of, I'll get through it, we'll figure it out, and then I'll get back to my regular life. Like, it wasn't woe is me,
Right.
why did God give me this? And I wasn't expecting, any pity parties. It was just kind of like, this is a part of my journey, let's figure it out, let's keep it moving. And that's pretty much what was going on because, one, I was in my senior year of college, I was trying to graduate. So, I ended up getting a kidney infection, had to wear a urine bag while going to class. So it was a lot of things that were happening that first year of me being diagnosed.
So
So,
once you got that, what was your mindset? Because like you said, you're very resilient and you didn't want a pity party, but when was that reality moment for you like, man, something's really going on?
um, the reality moment was when I was in the room and the physician was, stating to me that I needed to make my bucket list. And, I kind of needed to, figure out what the next few years would look like because there's not much research behind treatment. And, you know, I was like a walking, ticking time bomb. So, I don't know if you are familiar with blood clots and what that means.
Yeah, I
Having
suffer from blood clots.
yeah, so having sporadic or multiple blood clots in your body and you're not really knowing, what was going to happen or, if one would get in the right spot and go straight to your brain or if it will cause, if I was to go into cardiac arrest. So, understanding that part of it was easy to, was to get, but to understand that it was a rare blood cancer and that, I could be walking around with several blood clots within my body and I could just die at any moment and I had no
Mhm.
control over was probably the hardest part. But
Okay.
my faith in God is the reason why I was able to, say that, it's not in man's hand, it's only in God's hand. And that's who I need to go to when it came to my faith and, how I was going to go about my journey with this disease. Um, and I really couldn't go off of what he was telling me. It was a hard pill to swallow, but I then had to have a aha moment and tell myself this is the time for you to take your strength and prevail and continue to walk this journey that God has you on and do not allow this to um make you become a handicap and help you feel as if you're less than or at this point I need to go into a shell and become depressed because I have this going on, and that wasn't my thought process. I kind of went back to regular scheduled program the day after he gave me my medicine of what I needed to take, what the plan would look like, kind of, I would be coming in for these phlebotomies to pulled out about 500 mLs of blood and, these things that I would be, you know, going, going through. But I didn't allow it to, make me feel bad or
Right.
I didn't call a bunch of people and say, hey, we got to take these trips because we only, I only have so many years to live. It was just kind of like, okay, give me what the plan is. I had called my dad. And he actually had met me at breakfast to have this conversation and we had just dealt with my grandmother passing probably about a year and maybe a year it had passed. I don't even know if it had been that long,
Right.
but she had passed from pancreatic cancer, and that was his mom. So him getting this news that his daughter had been diagnosed with the rare blood cancer, he just really didn't understand or know how to take that news. One, because he wasn't educated about it, and two, we just lost, a big matriarch of our family. Um, not that long ago, which it took a toll on us. It took a toll on our family. So, my grandmother really looked at me as, that person to take the torch once she, passed on. So for him to feel as if his daughter has just got diagnosed with this rare blood cancer, it was just a huge pill to swallow.
And Taj, knowing like I said, you're like a niece to me, and me and your dad have been friends for over 40 years. Uh, just remember the day you were born and everything. But the faith in God, we hear a lot of people say God can do it. And,
Hmm.
we hear people talk about their faith in God, their faith in God. But from what I understand, a lot of people have never been challenged
No.
in their faith like you have.
They
What
not.
was it that made you stay true? Because some of us, we can't. I want to say that some people may deal with, oh, I can't pay my rent next month. I'm asking
Mhm.
God, or I
Yeah.
sprained my ankle, or I broke my leg. But you
Well,
talking about
imagine going through that and also going through the things that was dealing with. So imagine being a college student trying to figure out how you're going to pay your bills. You working two jobs. I was working two jobs full time. So, I was going to school full time. So I would uh go to class, get out of from class, go take a nap, get ready for work, and then do it all over again. Mind you, probably was working on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So it was the resilience part kicked in, and then also my faith in God, understanding that even through, as a young kid and tribulation, trials and tribulations that I went through as a child, and just, pushing through life as a young adult was hard, but it really didn't phase me, I guess. And I
mhm,
don't even know how to explain it because people probably would look at me like I was crazy, like, what? Like, what do you
right,
mean it didn't phase you? Um, I just took it as a part of my journey. It was a way for me to be able to share a story with others who may be battling depression, anxiety, or just battling um an invisible disease, whatever that may be, or whatever that struggle may be that you hide behind. Because what was happening was I was I was in front of people, and you couldn't tell that nothing. I looked fine. I
right,
had no issues. No one could really tell what I was dealing with internally, and I was in pain 24/7. There was not any point in time that I wasn't in pain. I was still working, I was still going through life as a normal adult, but no one actually really understood my struggle until I would end up in the hospital. And then they were like, oh, you do have something that you're dealing with on a daily basis. So it
mm,
wasn't to that point my family or friends would know, like, okay, she is dealing with something really serious. And what was happening is my physicians, the only reason I got to the point to where I am now is because usually they just treat you with chemo pills and other treatments, and they just see what happens. So you consistently are going through this battle or this journey and not knowing exactly what's going to happen. You can be on these meds, they may not work, your body may, become used to them, and now you're dealing with another moment of thinking like, okay, what's going to happen next? Am I going to die? Am I going to go to sleep? Am I going to go to sleep and not wake up?
right,
All those things that I went through. But when it came to my faith in God and understanding that even as a child, all the tribulations, there's always been an angel right by my side. In every part of my life, there's always, if it wasn't my parents, it was an aunt. If it wasn't an aunt, it was like an extended friend that my dad or my stepmom knew. Like it was always a olive branch from somewhere. I didn't ask for it. I didn't come looking for it. It always found me. So I just knew that going forward, that God would always send a person or place a person in my life to continue this journey with me. If it wasn't my parents, because they weren't capable of doing it, because they were working and
right,
still trying to provide for my siblings. Me understanding that God always provided another person, an angel, to walk aside with me while I traveled through this journey. So it was never a point to where I was alone. So it was just easy for me to understand that at any point in my life or any part of this journey that I was on, God would always be there. In any human form, spiritual form, I always had a person. So my faith never withered. There wasn't a point in my life where I was like, God doesn't exist, or
right.
God forsaken me and gave me this disease. Like, no, it wasn't that. It was just like I have a story to tell, and it's going to consistently um be a part of my journey, whatever that is and whatever it looks like.
And talking about your story, so the doctor said you wouldn't live that long. He
Hmm.
also said you wouldn't have what?
Children.
And we have who?
We have Miracle here.
Hey, Miracle.
You say hi. See, we're both matching.
I see. Hey, gorgeous.
Say hi. So, that wasn't in my cards for them to tell me that I couldn't have children. I wasn't listening to it. It wasn't something that I was going to accept or receive. So, I continue on whatever journey or path that God had for me. And I understood that no one could tell me what was in my cards but God. And, of course, God gave them the tools to be able to treat, and use the science to be able to help others. And that
Right.
was that was totally fine. But I wasn't receiving the data or the information that they felt that was meant for me. One, there wasn't enough data to state that it was impossible for me to have a child. It was
Hmm.
just, if you embark on this journey, you can become paralyzed, you can have a heart attack, um, while you're pregnant, X, Y, and Z can happen. You could die. I mean, you name it, it could happen.
Right.
But the funny part is, when I did get pregnant, my condition actually went dormant and I had no issues. Like,
Wow.
and that is why we named our child Miracle. Is because, one, she has been a miracle in our lives and in others. And then, what she did for me in the midst of me carrying her was huge. They've never seen it before. It's never happened. Usually they said, women, that the little data that they did have, they stated that women who carry children develop multiple blood clots. Their levels, or their labs were, um, gotten worse,
Right.
um, and had to be hospitalized or had a miscarriage, or it was a multitude of things that could possibly happen while carrying her. And while I carried her, um, no issues. No issues. The only issues were pregnancy issues, which was nausea and things that happen when you're pregnant. But as far as my condition, it basically, it felt like it went away.
Did that feel like a hiccup dealing with all you dealt with, the little nausea and stuff? Probably wasn't.
Yeah, it was a piece of cake compared to, you know, they always say when you get through something, it's kind of like, man, I made it through that. Like it's
Right.
kind of in the past. You don't really think about it. Yeah, that was pregnancy was a piece of cake compared to everything else.
And so, as we continue on your journey, I think it was a couple of years ago. Like I said, your dad is one of my best friends, and
Mhm.
Joe and Pep. We were going to Vegas,
Mhm.
and he couldn't go
He couldn't
because
come.
of something had happened. What was that?
So after I had my daughter, um, as much of a blessing she was, my body went into overgear. So it started working extremely, extremely overboard, and I started producing more red cells, more platelets. So the normal platelets is between like 200 and 100 is probably like the lowest of platelets. And that's like 100,000 to 200,000. I was
Okay.
operating at 2 million.
Wow.
So I had 2 million platelets, meaning my blood was clotting that much. So prior to me, or after I had my child, I went from like 800,000 to 900,000 to a million to 2 million. But this was happening on a weekly basis. This wasn't like a month and then a month later. This was like
Right.
every week I was jumping. So I had to go on something that was called platelet pheresis, where they had to put a dialysis catheter in my chest, to pull the platelets out and see if that would have helped me in lowering my numbers. But as fast as they were producing, they couldn't pull them out fast enough. So I was going on a weekly basis, and it was like basically wiping me out. I was extremely exhausted. It would take a couple hours to get done. They would hook me up to this machine. It was like a dialysis machine, where they would take my blood through this machine, pull the platelets out, and then put my blood back inside.
Mhm.
And that happened for a couple months. and then I developed like 3 or 4 blood clots, and they were like, we can't do this anymore because we are operating at a point to where you won't be here much longer. So they told me that I needed a bone marrow transplant. And being African American, unfortunately, on the donors list, there's not a lot of African Americans who have actually put their name on a bone marrow transplant list to become a donor, which I
Okay.
definitely advise those. And I know a lot of us sign up for like to be a kidney donor and an organ donor, but it's also very important for us to get on the list, um, to also be on Be the Match. That's what it's called. That's the website, bethematch.com. They can go
Okay.
on and add their name to the list, and they will send them a kit. All it takes is a swab of your cheek and send that off. And if you're matched, they'll reach out to you. Um, some processes are simple. My father actually ended up being my donor because they did not find a match on the list at all. There were none whatsoever, not even
Hmm.
close. Um, so my dad was a half match, and he accepted to be my donor. So the reason why he couldn't make it to Vegas is because he was going through a procedure to remove his bone marrow from his backside, which is his hip. Um, they got his his cells one day, and that same day I received them. So, after he got they did his procedure, they brought him up to see me because of course, um during that time COVID was still happening, so they
Oh
weren't allowing
yeah.
anyone to come into the hospital or to see patients. So they brought him up for a few minutes just so I can see him, and then we gave hugs and talked for a second, and then he was on his way.
And that is so awesome because anybody that knows your dad knows just what a giving, caring person he is.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
for him to be able to, in a sense, give you life a second time was
He
pretty
basically
awesome.
gave me a whole so it was a rebirth, and that's what they call it, as a new birthday, because they wipe you out and then they rebuild you, which is with a whole new immune system. So I was like a newborn baby all over again. So, I was maybe a second child of his, but yeah, he basically gave me life again. So I'm extremely grateful for that.
And I don't want to be remiss and shout out your awesome husband. I hadn't met
Oh
him
yes,
until last year,
he
and
is awesome.
he is one of a kind.
Yeah, he really is. Him and his mother, I call her Mama Simmons, were extremely huge in my recovery process. One, because they were both in the home with me, and during that time, I'm on immunosuppressants, so I don't have an immune system, and anything that someone is carrying, a cough, a cold, um, the issue is that I can get sick off of that. You can sneeze on me and I would get a cold. So
Right.
they actually stayed in the house for as long as I needed them to. And none of them went outside. If they went outside, my husband literally like put on several masks, wore gloves. He probably had on a suit, going in
Right.
stores to get what I needed. But he was my support system. He was there from the beginning to the end. He actually ended up making sure his job had him as remote, so he could be at all my appointments. He brought his computer, his backpack. He would work in the rooms while I was getting all my treatment. So, you name it, he was taking care of our child. We had a 6 month old when, I started this process. So it wasn't easy for him to manage that. And, being separated from my child was probably the hardest part of my transplant. It
Oh,
wasn't
I'm
even
sure.
going through it. Even though I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Um, that part of not being around her was the hardest. So, everything else, I kind of just took it as is and just went through it. But it was not an easy journey, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
I'm sure. And like I said, Dante's been one heck of a husband,
Yeah, he
father.
has. He
So
really has.
definitely shout out to him.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, Taj, as we get ready to wrap up, what's some things couple of things. What would you recommend people as far as health, like if they're feeling something? Because especially us men, we always say, "Oh, I'll be all right. I'll be all
Y-
right."
Yes, that's the problem. That's just the problem with our generation or just African Americans in general. We are scared to go or to find out if something is going wrong or anything that's happening with you. You have to be your biggest advocate. That's what I recommend. I actually started, my own organization or nonprofit. It's called Invisible to the Eye. And that's just, me advocating for other women and men who are having issues with either your healthcare providers, they're not listening, they're not understanding what you're going through because a barrier that I face is that I looked fine. I would go to the emergency room with these issues or complaints when I had my second stroke, and they were like, but you're young. Why would you be having a stroke or why would you be having these symptoms? Like, are you on drugs? That was
Oh,
kind of the first thought process to, the symptoms that I was experiencing. And I don't do drugs, I don't drink. So,
right.
that thing, it definitely put me in a place of being uncomfortable with understanding, that it's some people out here who are very ignorant to the fact that there are people who are battling these invisible diseases and not really aware of what that may look like. Um, and unfortunately, emergency room nurses and doctors only deal with what comes to them. They don't specialize in what it was that I was dealing with. A lot of them didn't even understand what it was or what disease I had and how to treat it. So I found myself educating every time I was at a doctor's office or every time I was in the emergency room experiencing these symptoms, and was very frustrating. So I definitely recommend anyone that is going through something to be your biggest advocate. Get a part of any foundation or facilities or any pharmaceutical companies that are doing experimental drugs and get a part of them and make people understand that we are here and they will see us.
And that is so true. Like I said, one, we don't like going to the doctor, but then we don't question them. We
Nope,
don't want to ask second opinions a lot of
nope.
times.
I did
And
first, second, and third opinion. I
I
went
know
all the way
that's
to the
right.
Mayo. I went all the way to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. We drove 14 hours to the
Wow.
to Minnesota Mayo Clinic to get a final diagnosis and a better understanding of what it was I was facing and kind of what my journey would look like. I didn't stop here in my hometown. We actually went to Minnesota to get a better understanding of what it was. I went to the doctor who was doing research and actually was a professor in helping people understand what this disease was and what we were facing. That was the next steps in my journey. So I didn't stop at what I've received on my first
Right.
diagnosis. I went for a second and third opinion. So I'm huge on being your biggest advocate. I'm huge at getting in front of those pharmaceutical companies and researchers to help them understand that we need to be a part of those because we are definitely important.
Definitely. So anything you want to leave them with, whether it's resources, just anything you want to just close out with, the floor is yours.
Yeah,
You can get on
so
your soapbox, whatever you want to call it. Hey, just let them
Ah,
have it.
yeah, I definitely want to be well, make people aware of that there are resources out there. Do not ever feel like you're alone. Facebook is a huge opportunity for you to reach out to others. There's multiple organizations and groups on Facebook that I've joined. Um, that's been a huge help. There's also, different nonprofits. It's so many nonprofits all over the world. I'm a part of the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. I'm actually on one of their boards. Just, understand that the only person that can help you understand what it is you're going through is you. Even, some of these doctors do not come down to a level that you are to help you better understand. They're usually like, get in, get out. This is the paperwork. They give you a printout and, you know, lead you on your way, and that's pretty much it. But you have to make them do the work. That's what they're getting paid for. You have to make them do their job. If you have more questions, ask questions. When you go into your appointment, make sure you have those questions written down, have a notebook, have a notepad. There is an organization called Bag It that I'm a part of, and also a program called Escape. Escape is an organization where you actually come, other people who are diagnosed with cancer, they come, they have a moment of where you detach from the entire world. Like this week, you detach from your phone, you detach from social media, you come together. The camaraderie is amazing. You come together, you discuss kind of barriers that you're facing, barriers that's been faced in the cancer world, and also just in healthcare, and you try to bridge the gap in that. And that program is awesome. And then Bag it actually sends you a bag with a binder that helps you go through your journey. And it has like
Mm.
pamphlets, it has things for your caregiver, it has things for you, it has places where you can put cards, it has places in it where you can put questions, it has places in it where you can put any forms that you receive from your physician in it. And it also gives you a section to write down any questions that you may have for that physician as you're walking into that. So if you have a caregiver one week and then a separate caregiver next, you will have all that information in this binder that has everything that relates to you and what it is you're going through, and it helps you navigate the process just a little bit better.
Wow. And if people want to get in touch with you, and I'm going to say this, you didn't say it, I'm saying it, and they want to pay you to come and talk to their organizations, how can they get in touch with you?
I'm on Facebook currently. My name is Taja Simmons on there. That's the way you can contact me right now. I'm actually rebranding my website. It will still be invisible to the eye.org. Right now, it's in the process of being rebranded and rebuilt because I want to get a different audience, meaning a broader audience. I want to deal with everyone who's dealing with the invisible disease and feel like they don't have any support. And I would like for my organization to be the place where you can receive that support if you have questions about financial issues, if you have any, questions about physicians that you should go see or should try. If you need information about support groups, if your caregivers need support, you can come to me as well.
And knowing you the way I do, loving you the way I do, I have
I
a
love you
bonus.
too.
I have a bonus question for you. We
Yes.
know you're not done yet,
No, not at
but
all.
but when they make a movie, who's gonna play you?
Um, my child probably would play me. Miracle probably would play me. I think she would do a wonderful
Who
job.
would Dante want to play him? The
That's
Rock.
a Yeah, probably The Rock. I could definitely see that. You know what? They say, who do they say he John Legend. John Legend. I think he would have John Legend play him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, hey, when you had the movie premiere, I'll definitely be there
Yes, you'll
because
be front and center.
yes, because your story is not complete yet. God is
It's
only
not. It's
beginning.
not. And I also have, if you look up Invisible to the Eye, and put my maiden name, which is Taja, T is in Tom, A is in Apple, J is in Jack, A is in Apple, my maiden last name, which is Shabazz. Everyone should be familiar with that because of Malcolm X and Betty Shabazz, but it's SHA, B is in boy, AZZ. I have a YouTube, it's a snippet of my journey, kind of
Okay.
the beginning parts of prior to me getting my bone marrow transplant. You guys can see a piece of that journey on there. It's on YouTube. It's Invisible to the Eye, Taja Shabazz.
And we'll definitely put a link to everything you referenced in the
Okay,
notes so that people can reach out,
okay.
hire you, which means pay you to come and share
Yes,
because your story is awesome. What God has done for you is awesome. And I just, hey, you are such an inspiration. And I thank
thank
you for just
you.
taking time out.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm greatly appreciative of you. I am, very grateful for you and my father's friendship and the journey that you're on. And I thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. And one last thing, the drug that I actually was on prior to me getting my bone marrow transplant is called Jacophy. It's very helpful. It's a known drug. It's actually on commercials now. So if
Okay.
you're dealing with GVHD, which is something that I'm still battling, it's basically my body still trying to reject my dad's cells. But Jacophy is a drug that has helped me tremendously, even before and after my transplant. So I definitely suggest that as well.
Well, definitely. Let's close out with prayer. So, Father God, we thank you, Lord, for all that you've done through Taja. Lord God, we thank you that she's not afraid or ashamed to say what you've done for her and what you continue to do. And Lord, we thank you that you said, if two shall touch and agree, believe in anything on earth, it shall be done. So, Lord, as we touch and agree, we thank you that you will continue the healing process, that her body will not reject but accept her father's cell. And Lord God, let them just blend and merge together as you did, as they did when you first created her. We thank you for continuing to watch over her, Dante, and Miracle. And Lord, continue developing this success story for those that will believe in you, what is possible. And we thank you for it in your son, Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I love you. Tell Dante I said, hey, and I will be in touch. All righty. Bye bye.